Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It's episode 2499 of The Tom Woods Show. I have no idea what it is I'm trying to prove here, but next episode will be big 2500. But I'm really delighted to have with us today Jennifer Bilek, who was referred to me by Dr. Miriam Grossman, a previous guest, who said, as you'll see in the transcript, she says, you've got to get her on. And I thought, then doggone it, I do what Dr. Grossman tells me, and I'm glad we have this opportunity. And Jennifer Bilek's an interesting person. Am I pronouncing your name right?
No, it's actually Bilek, but nobody pronounces it right.
Does everybody get that wrong?
Yes, everybody.
I am so doggone it. I like to be different.
Everybody says it differently, so don't worry about it.
Well, I was about to say nobody makes that mistake with Woods, but no, but they all leave off the S, so it's Tom Wood. That just makes me crazy. So anyway, what I was going to say was that, and I don't really want to dwell on this part of the conversation because we'll never get out of it. But is that I was looking at your blog, and by the way, is it also in the form of a Substack? It is, right?
And yes, the Substack is a little different, but basically, yeah, you can switch between the two and not miss much.
Okay, so it's the 11th hour. So the website, the blog is the11thhourblog.com, and 11 is of course numerical, so the11thhourblog.com. But I was looking at your description of yourself as somebody who you say that you've spent your life more or less on the political left, and now you feel politically homeless, and you're not so interested in applying labels. And I can very much sympathize with that. But I guess the only question I want to ask about that is, was it this particular issue of transgenderism and where that's led you, was it that specifically that made you say, I'm politically homeless and agnostic at this point?
No, not exactly. And I have to say, first of all, thank you so much for having me on and inviting me to speak. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And yeah, it wasn't really this particular issue, though it was, an impetus. I was involved in political activism, and I noticed the tenor of the left really, really altered in a big way at a lot of different fronts. And it was very pronounced on this front, because new McCarthyism started to sort of dig its heels into the left, where you couldn't speak about different issues that you could speak about before. So I got really alarmed by that. I mean, it had sort of been developing. And then when I got into this work, into journalism, and specifically covering this area, after covering the Occupy Wall Street movement in New York City, where I live. And I noticed around that time, after the camps were shut down, that this McCarthyism that I'm talking about, a second wave of McCarthyism, started to really become very pronounced. And, working for the environment, the health of the environment, in my political activist work, and the rights for women, it was really hard not to acknowledge biological reality. And people that were acknowledging biological reality were the people that were being shut down. So I started to investigate that and try to assess what the broader picture was. Because there were a lot of, young people showing up at different speaking engagements and conferences, and they'd make a whole lot of noise. But I was like, well, these people don't have any power. They're young kids. Where does the power come from to silence people and get people deplatformed? And so I started to investigate the money behind the gender industry. Where does it come from? Where does it go? Who is doing the funding? What else are they invested in? And following this trail was very, very enlightening and interesting. So I didn't get really very jammed up in the whole cultural milieu, what's going on around gender and masculine and feminine and expression and, all that stuff. I just bypassed that and went straight for the power behind what was going on. And then when I wanted to discuss that with people to see, to sort of get a pulse on, was I on the right trail? I went to I tried to initiate a conference at the Left Forum in New York City, which is like a 3-day long annual conference about everything you can imagine regarding the left side of politics. Historically, currently, all of it. And so I did get a spot and to talk about this issue. But then the venue got completely inundated by trans activists, and they shut down the talk and apologized to the trans activists. So I was like, oh, I guess I really am on the right trail here. So that really was a very big jumping off point for me to continue this work and to publish about it. And then I started the blog.
Okay, well, to me, the most intriguing aspect of what you've been doing involves the question of where a movement like this comes from. Now, the popular rendition of it will be that it was a grassroots, from the ground up movement on behalf of marginalized people with particular needs that ought to be catered to. And you're arguing that, to the contrary, there is nothing organic about this movement whatsoever. It was, in fact, a top-down operation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you have governments across the Western world, international corporations, international law firms, the biggest international law firms, religious organizations, educational institutions, right down to children's grade schools, all adopting the same narrative that contraindicates what we know about something so fundamental to our biological reality and our position in the whole biological world, our sex reality, when they all decide simultaneously that this has all been one big mistake and that we now have to rearrange society in accordance with a narrative that goes completely against that. It's complete anti-reality hokum. You have to know that something is very, very amiss. But the propaganda about what's happening here, that sex suddenly exists on a spectrum, and they've only 2 seconds ago, discovered this. Scientists have made this great discovery that sex isn't real. The sex binary isn't real. You were going to say something? Sorry.
Well, I want to be as fair to them as I can, just because I don't want to be accused of straw manning them. But they're going to say, oh, no. We're just saying that gender, because they say sex is something we can identify biologically. Gender is something interior that you identify as. Now, this is all just assertion. There's never any argument made. This is simply an assertion. I never hear any defense of this. They just say to me, that's what gender is. Gender is something that is interior and it involves your personal identification. And they speak to me like I'm an idiot. But what they've given me is not in any way an argument. It is merely an ex cathedra pronouncement.
Well, this is typical of the narrative that's been marketed to us. And the goalposts on this word are constantly moving. Most people don't agree on what this word means anyway. I mean, many, many years ago, it was just a stand-in for sex. And then, academia sort of rearranged that, and it became a stand-in for sex role stereotypes. Like women wanting to wear high heels because they were born with this propensity or something, and so then it became a stand-in for that, and then it became just expression about your personality. what you like. So now we're at the point where gender doesn't really mean anything at all. And it's not a word that we really need. We really should bin it. This way they can talk about what they're really talking about, which is the abolition of the sexual binary, the reproductive binary. That's what's going on here. It's a deconstruction process of the boundary between males and females.
But what is now we get to the bottom of it here. Why would anybody be motivated to do that? It seems like a very strange goal to have in mind.
Indeed. But really, if you look at it, like I'm really plugged into the whole monetary aspect and the power behind that.
Right.
And so if you look at it as opening markets in sexual identity, like first of all, take same-sex attraction, which is being used as a Trojan horse to drive this ideology. Same-sex attraction is just a sexual orientation to the same sex. It doesn't harm anybody. As itself, it doesn't harm anybody. It doesn't intrude on anything. It doesn't upend anything socially. But once you make corporate identities out of this same-sex attraction, now you're going to want to open your markets. Because if you're a corporation and the LGB did become a corporation, and it's now a marketing constituency worth like $4.7 trillion. So it's a lot of power and a lot of capital. But what happened was they wanted to open their markets in sexual identity. But you can't do that unless, you have more sexes, right? And you can't have more sexes unless you break that boundary between, men and women. At least, to make it look like you're breaking that boundary. I mean, obviously you can't break that boundary. They haven't broken that boundary yet. But you open markets in sexual identity by promoting the idea that sex exists on a spectrum. And gender ideology does this.
Now, the thing is, I am in no way resistant to your thesis. I think there is very, very likely to be a great deal of explanatory power for it. But I could imagine somebody saying, there's the peanut companies, though, don't try to promote an ideology making us all think we're elephants. So how would they, this seems to come out of nowhere. You know what I mean? I mean, there are a lot of ways you could make money. Why would you think?
But this is going to make a lot of money because it's a transhumanist paradigm. And transhumanism is basically an ideology that espouses that we can move beyond our humanity, our physical, biological humanity, through technological interventions. Like, for instance, Elon Musk's new disc that you put in your brain to help paraplegics, right? You're actually fusing AI with humanity, with the biological. So this is the impetus behind here, is fusing humanity with technology. And we're at the beginning stages. We're in the embryonic stages of doing this. But at this front, at the gender front, it's a means of grooming the next generation to think of themselves as commodities. Their wholly sexed humanity reduced to parts, commodities for the technological reproduction market. And fusing this with the LGBT civil rights movement, you now have a whole marketing constituency for reproductive technologies, because same-sex attracted people will be using, technological reproduction to have their own children.
Hey everybody, Wall Street tells you that if you follow their investment advice, you'll retire in a lower tax bracket. Yet many retirees who followed their advice are finding themselves in the highest tax bracket of their lives. But there's another way. Bank on Yourself is a better way to grow and protect your hard-earned money. This retirement plan alternative has never had a losing year in over 160 years. With Bank on Yourself, your plan doesn't go backward when the markets tumble. Your principal and growth are locked in. You'll know what your tax rate will be in retirement. zero under current tax law, which protects you from the coming tax tsunami. And you're in control. You get access to your money for any purpose with no questions asked and without government penalties or restrictions on how much income you can take or when you can take it. Try doing that with a 401k or IRA. You can't. Do you want guaranteed, predictable annual growth, control of your money, and tax-free retirement income? Then go to bankonyourself.com/woods, and we'll send you a free report with a proven retirement plan alternative that banks and Wall Street are desperately hoping you never hear about. Just go to bankonyourself.com/woods for your free report. Bankonyourself.com/woods. Okay, so then what is the deeper significance then of calling women birthing people or cervix havers? And by the way, I went through my whole life never hearing the word havers, but that's now a new thing.
Well, this is women have the lion's share of responsibility for reproducing our species. So it's a way to promote the concept that we're a part. We're not wholly sexed humans, beings. We are parts that are, mix and match. Yeah. And so what this, where this comes from basically is the fetish of transsexualism, which is men attempting to own womanhood for sexual gratification. Now, a lot of transsexuals have organized to make this, to create legal structure for the normalization of this in society. And now it's becoming an industry in deconstructing womanhood, in deconstructing human reproduction. You have breasts, you have penises, you have vaginas, you have cervixes, you have chromosomes, you have hormones. These are all parts, but it's a disassembling process. It's a commodification. Yeah.
So are you looking at what's happening and concluding that the only explanation for this crazy drive to use these words, to push these surgeries, to push this gender ideology must be this end game? Or have they flat out said that this is the end game?
This is a great question. I didn't invent all this. I went researching, and this is what I found. I mean, at the seat of this crazy, if you want to call it a movement, I call it an agenda, because it's, there's absolute, there's a drive behind it, a construction, a drive to actually promote this, to market this as positive, as progressive. And at the seat of this movement is a man named Martin Rothblatt. He fancies himself a woman. He's a transsexual. He's got quite a lot of power within the culture. He's an entrepreneur and a lawyer, and he's been the owner of a major biopharmaceutical corporation, and he has a xenotransplantation farm, which is grows pigs for organs to transplant into humans. He also has a plastic company to make organs. I forget what you call that. When you make something out of that's not concrete, out of plastic. Sorry, can't remember. He's also worked at the Human Genome Project at the UN level. He's invested in virtual realities. He has a technological religion called Terrorism, where he believes we are making God with technology. He's made a robot of his wife, so he's very, very invested in artificial intelligence. And he is in a broad range of sectors within society. Like he travels around in a broad range of areas in the culture, like Hollywood. He's been interviewed on The View with Whoopi Goldberg, with his robot wife, and his actual wife. And he sits on the board of the Mayo Clinic. And like I said, he's been invested in pharma. And he's also created Sirius XM satellite radio. So he's invested in satellite communication and surveillance. So really, I mean, he's in the pharma, sector. He's in the technology sector. He's in, he's part of the Out Leadership, which is the business networking arm of the LGBT. He goes around lecturing on the on ramp from transgenderism to transhumanism, and how this is good and progressive, and this is what's happening here. Right? And he also has written about this. He's written From Transgender to Transhuman. He's likened sexual dimorphism in humans to South African apartheid, where you're sorting people and segregating people in a negatively discriminatory fashion. So he's really invested in deconstructing biology, biological reality. And also artificial reproduction, technological reproduction. He's written about that. He's written about virtual reality. And he's been mentored by Ray Kurzweil of Google, who has the first transhumanist corporate platform at their headquarters. And they invest in artificial intelligence, obviously, and also in the LGBT. So, and he's not alone. I mean, he's just very, very representative of a broader spectrum of people who are investing in this. Artificial reproduction, reproductive technologies, gender clinics, technology, AI.
So, but there must also, I would think, be people maybe who aren't into any of that, but who nevertheless have a financial stake in the spread of these ideas.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A $4.7 trillion marketing constituency. This is the power behind the current LGBT, what I like to call a cartel. It's a cartel. It's not, it's not what people think it is. It's no longer a human rights movement for same-sex attracted individuals. In fact, same-sex attracted individuals, like I said earlier, are being used as a Trojan horse. Same-sex attraction and heterosexuality both rest on the reality of sexual dimorphism. That there is a binary between, a male and female, right? But gender ideology seeks to deconstruct that process. So it's really a fox in the hen house. Yeah. And a lot of people have no idea what's going on here. They just think this is part of the LGBT, which is what they've been told. And so to contest anything that's now going on in this, what has become, an orgiastic kink fest of political power, is to be, considered as some kind of bigot and horrible, horrible person. You want all gay people dead. When in actuality, this, is conversion. This is the conversion process, because a lot of the people caught up in this are lesbian and gay young people who take their same-sex attraction to mean, oh, they must be the opposite sex. So let me go, get my body parts rearranged so I can present as the opposite sex from the person that I'm desirous of, right? And so then I fit right into this, into heterosexuality, which is a lot more comfortable for people. It's a wild thing, but like I said, when you start to get into all the dynamics, the cultural dynamics and how it's playing out socially, it's very, very confusing. It's like a multi-headed hydra, But if you look at the money and where the investments are going and who these people are that are investing in this, you have another transsexual, Jennifer Pritzker, who's part of one of the wealthiest families in America, the Pritzker family. His cousin is J.B. Pritzker, who's the governor of Chicago.
Oh, Illinois.
And Penny, yeah.
Yeah.
And Penny Pritzker is also his cousin, JB's sister. And she was the impetus behind getting Obama elected. She became his Secretary of Commerce. And she now is part of the whole Harvard political apparatus and culture. And they've given millions and millions, I would say billions of dollars, actually, to universities throughout America, Israel, Canada, to promote gender ideology, which deconstructs human sexual dimorphism.
I guess the thing that I have trouble understanding is the dynamic between the universities and this movement, because it does seem like gender theory was being taught there for a while, and then it seeped out into society. It doesn't appear to the casual observer that a couple of billionaires came up with the idea and then invented these university departments. So how does the university plug into this, the way this movement has developed?
Well, I would have to say that all of our civil rights movements, our strong civil rights movements of the left, have been co-opted to serve corporate narratives. The Black civil rights movement, the LGBT civil rights movement, women's civil rights movements. These were all very good social and strong social justice movements on the left that really created a lot of good things for society. But at a certain point, and I would say it was like probably before Occupy Wall Street, but at the moment of Occupy Wall Street is when it really started to coalesce. These movements were sort of corporately usurped to serve corporations and not the people that were, the marginalized that they were supposed to serve, right? And also because a lot of those changes were made in society, and those constituencies were no longer so marginalized. There's sort of the narrative was sort of flipped, so these groups sort of became a caricature. Their marginalization became a caricature, like to be used as a caricature. Oh, you're not oppressed anymore. You're just whining. You just want to be a victim. This whole left ideology is victimization. It's just victimization. But it wasn't just victimization. I mean, there really were and are constituencies that are actually marginalized. And you cannot speak about them now without, sounding like an idiot. Because it has been framed as such a crazy thing. And there are so many people that are in this now that really do thrive on victimization. So that victimization has actually really been created. But it didn't start out that way. I don't know if that's clear. Because it's not as clear to me, how that usurpation actually happened. It's clear to me that it has happened, but I'm not really sure how it did happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just I'm surprised that if there's a huge amount of money in this, and there obviously is, you would think that there would be some peep from the progressive left because whenever somebody's getting rich on something, even if it's something they like, it seems to be annoying to them. And yet nobody seems to complain that a lot of people are getting extremely wealthy this way. It's the only time I've seen them not complain about people getting extremely wealthy. They don't like basketball players getting wealthy, authors, athletes, whatever. Whoever it is, they don't like getting wealthy. I would have thought there'd be some complaint. You guys are monetizing people's suffering or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, it is a fantastic thing to behold. I mean, it's amazing. I can't believe it myself. I mean, and I know other people on the left who are just standing there agog. Like, how did this happen? I mean, the left is now in bed with corporations, and banks, fluffing their pillows. It's like, well, how exactly did that happen? What happened to, God, fighting these financial behemoths? I don't know. Like I said, I'm not really clear on how the usurpation happened, but I'm clear that it did. And the left has become a caricature of its once really strong self.
Well, if what's being proposed here is so obviously destructive and anti-human, as you and I know it is, then how were so many people able to be persuaded to go along with it, or at least keep their mouths shut about it?
Well, it's the same thing that happened in the McCarthyist era. People who were, their whole, people were framed as communists, and it's a horrible thing to be. And oh my God, well, it's the same thing today. You're a horrible, disgusting, bigoted, Nazi, anti-Semite, whatever. They'll just throw the book at you. You know what I mean? Your books are taken off shelves. They're taken off of Amazon. Your papers are not published. Your books are not published. Your papers are not published. You're framed as a horrible person, and people, don't want that. It's terrible, and they see that happening to other people, and it's like, God, I don't want that to happen to me. So even if I see that this is just really crazy and not right, I'm not going to say anything because, hey, I got to support my family. I have to have this job. But what am I going to do?
It's the speed of it, though. How did we go from no one was even thinking about this to all of a sudden, you're going to have your reputation destroyed if you say anything? I mean, how did that happen so fast, like in the blink of an eye? I mean, maybe that's a rhetorical question.
Well, it didn't happen in the blink of an eye. It was just rolled out in the blink of an eye, and has been ferociously marketed. You can't turn around without hearing about gender ideology or gender identity or transgenderism. You can't turn around and not hear it. It's everywhere. We're all over our tech anyway, and that's where it's coming from. And the kids are the same. They're on tech much more than we are. They're all over social media. And this is where they're learning about it. They're learning about it in their schools. You can be a boy or a girl. This is in most school curriculums now. You can choose your sex.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here with another word on behalf of the outstanding monetary metals, where I have been very happy to have an account because I earn interest on my gold paid in gold. And I'm very happy to be joined today for this extremely brief mini interview with Addison Qualley, who actually works for Monetary Metals. How'd that come about? And I think you have a job where you actually really believe in what you do.
That's correct, Tom. Basically, I am the VP of Relationships here at the company. I've been here since 2013, and I basically lead the sales department and help people come on board Monetary Metals and help handle their accounts. I've always been a big fan of freedom. Somehow along the way, was a fan of freedom just from high school. That really kicked up a notch when I started following your show in 2013. And I was working at a gold company at the time. I came to understand that gold is honest money and a very good thing. And when I learned about Monetary Metals back then, around 2016, it just seemed like something that could really change the world for good. If you can earn interest on gold and finance in gold, that is potentially world changing, and you can get gold to come back into the monetary system. So that really excited me. I jumped ship from my old company. I joined Monetary Metals back then. And, one of the exciting ideas we had in our head was, at the time, Uber was kind of taking out the New York City taxi cabs, and Uber had gone viral. And we thought, if interest on gold, if earning yield on gold could go viral, maybe that could become a legitimate alternative to the dollar. And we're excited to be growing a lot since then. The company's grown by leaps and bounds, and it's been a very exciting journey.
Well, I'm very glad to be able to be a very small part of it. So find out more and join me. Open up your own account with Monetary Metals. Head over to monetary-metals.com/woods to get more information. That's monetary-metals.com/woods. And what about when people say to you, because I'll try and play devil's advocate here. Sometimes people might look at opinions I hold and say, oh, you're in the thrall of the X industry. You're probably getting a paycheck from the Z industry. I ain't getting no paycheck from any industry. It's a dumb thing to say. The opinions I hold sincerely. And nobody would hold my opinions for any reason other than sincerity. So I am inclined to think that there are a lot of people who are promoting, I hate using their language, but quote, gender affirming care, because they are not because they think I'm going to make $1 million off it or billions of dollars, or because I'm a transhumanist, but simply because I am a lover of humanity who hates suffering. And I believe that these treatments will alleviate the suffering of kids who might otherwise commit suicide. And don't we owe them the courtesy of expressing what are their likely motives accurately? Because probably most of them aren't transhumanists, and most of them aren't going to become billionaires from it. How do you address those people who honestly think they're just being sincere in trying to help people?
They're victims of weaponized empathy. They do really believe that they're helping people because this is the narrative that they've been sold. And the media is actually in bed with the corporations and the oligarchs and big pharma. I mean, every major media conglomerate, which sends the same message through all of their platforms, whatever platforms they have, and they have a lot of them because there's really only, maybe 2 handfuls of actual conglomerates where all the news comes from, media, mainstream media-wise. And they're all promoting the same information, and they all have investments in big pharma, and obviously technology, because that's where all media comes over now. So I forgot where I started out. I had mentioned weaponized empathy, but people really do believe, because this is the messages they've been told, that they're helping people. And this is also part of the LGB. Most Western cultures have, found a space for people who are same-sex attracted, because they haven't really, the threat is gone, that they're going to take over, that they're going to disrupt, heterosexuality, that they're depraved, they live amongst us and it's fine. So even if you're not completely on board for it, you're like, okay, cool, right? Oh, well, now everybody knows somebody who's gay. So it's like, if you attack, LGBT, you're attacking my person. You know what I mean? You're attacking somebody that I know, somebody in my family, one of my friends. So, oh my God, aren't you a horrible person? Yeah. So this is how they get over, and they censor all alternative information. I mean, what I'm talking about, nobody knows about what I'm talking about. I mean, comparatively speaking, to this narrative. I mean, and nobody really is talking about, the transhumanist connection. I mean, very few of us are. But, it's inevitable that people will start talking about it, because it's becoming more and more pronounced, and they're really not hiding it as well as they used to. Because they're moving very fast. The technologies are already there to change our species' borders. So they really have to change society to change our perceptions of ourselves so that we'll accept these technologies. And that's what the real program is here. Change society to change our perceptions about ourselves as biologically sexed, systems connected to the rest of biology.
Let me just ask you, just out of curiosity, if you were to come into contact with somebody who is obviously a man but wants you to call him Tina, would you do it?
Probably.
Like the name on his license is Frank.
Anybody has the right to change their name. You don't have the right. Some people do have the legal right, but I think it's wrong to walk around and appropriate the sex humanity of somebody else, reduced to parts. A lot of people don't realize that we've been groomed for this by the porn industry, because it's really the place It's a whole industry, billions and billions of dollars worth of industry in the sexual objectification of women, looking at women as parts, as breasts, as vaginas for your sexual gratification, right? So once you normalize that, and really in 1950s porn, like when it was brought into the home through magazines like Penthouse and Playboy magazine, this normalized this further in the culture that you can reduce women to sexual parts. Now we've had, 2 generations of that. And the porn behind closed doors has gotten more and more violent and depraved and debasing and dehumanizing. And the porn that was there behind the closed doors in 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s is now out in the culture, in the open, like Megan Thee Stallion riding around doing sexual acts and Madonna doing her sexual acts on a music stage. So all that pornography that was out there is now into the culture. And this grooms the public, it desensitizes them. So we accept more and more objectification and dissociation from, sex as intimacy.
Okay, let me. I think I want to maybe word this differently because I'm curious about your opinion. If you meet somebody, let's say, who has bought into the whole gender theory stuff, gender ideology, and is, let's say, in the process of quote unquote transitioning, is your thought you've been manipulated by public opinion that's been engineered, that did not organically bubble up from the bottom, but that you were part of like a re-education program society-wide, and I feel sorry that happened. Is that the way you look at somebody in that situation?
Yes.
Like you don't say you are responsible for what's happening here. It's more you are a pawn in somebody else's much larger game.
Absolutely.
I understand you're in the middle of writing a book.
I am. Transsexual, transgender, transhuman, and it's dispatches from my blog. So articles and blog posts that I've written over the last decade about this issue and how it's evolved from a male sexual fetish of owning womanhood into an industry of literally owning womanhood through reproductive technologies.
10 years ago, when we're talking about this issue, seems like an eternity because it's all happened so fast. As you've compiled that book and look back on things you wrote 10 years ago, how have things, do you notice in your writing a difference of tone or that things have changed dramatically even since then? And if so, how?
It's a good question. I have to really think about that. 10 years ago, I was really, I was clear about the transhumanist element.
Were they pushing it quite as heavily on kids back 10 years ago? Was that already happening?
Yes, it was happening, but not to the degree that it's happening now. Not so much in the open. And it's really gone from this when the whole kids were brought into the picture, which was pretty rapidly. First you had Laverne Cox on the cover of Time magazine, which is owned by Mark Benioff, who's also invested in reproductive technologies. And then you had what's his name, Bruce Jenner, on the cover of Vanity Fair in a woman's corset, talking about pilfering his young daughter's underwear drawer while she was out, and to all sorts of amusement of the public. And then very quickly on the heels of that, you had gender dysphoria for children, for children born in the wrong bodies. They're going to kill themselves, if they don't get these medical treatments, right? And now the narrative has moved very, very quickly to expression, self-expression. Everybody has the right to express their inner gender identity. What happened to body dysphoria? So the goalposts have moved quite a lot.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and very rapidly they've moved, So with all this information coming at you, and it's attacking something that's so profoundly primal to your existence, sex reality, right? you're being inundated with information that is attacking this reality, you're going to be off kilter. And then the messages are very confusing. And, they switch from one thing to another. And the definitions, the borders of the words that they use aren't there. There's no borders on the words. Gender means this, gender means that, or gender means something else, year to year. Or organization to organization. I mean, it's a crazy house. So you're really keeping people off kilter, with the messaging and the narrative and the exclusion of anything that would make any sense out of it. Censoring anybody that could possibly make sense out of this. So now you have a whole population that has just been fed this one narrative. They've been psychologically manipulated. They've been kept off kilter. They've been absolutely inundated with propaganda so that you can't get away from it. And this is about goodness. This is about being fair. This is about equality. This is about being empathetic to other people that are different from you. And if you don't embrace that, you're a horrible, horrible, bigoted person. Yeah. So this is, how it's a psyops. It's actually, military grade psychological operation of the population. I've never seen anything like this, and I'm 65. So this is, I have been around, the political bloc here and there. I mean, I do look at political movements, and I've never seen anything like this. The breadth of it is absolutely staggering. It's global. It is a global apparatus.
And so now I've read enough of what you've written and heard enough of what you have to say to know that you're not terribly optimistic about the future, and not ruling out that we may somehow come out of the madness, but not by any means assuming that it's bound to happen. What would need to happen? Is it just a matter of people getting a backbone? I mean, what would have to happen?
I think the most beneficial thing we can do is get information out there about what's actually happening, because to sustain this illusion and to further it is to, it can't really physically be done in the real world because it takes too much of the natural world to sustain it. Tech is very expensive. You have to dig up the world, basically, to colonize the land that hasn't been used yet, to make this technology, to create this dystopia that they want, and it's just not going to happen because at varying different fronts, the environment is already in collapse. So, yeah, they're not going to be able to sustain that. And so I think that when things start to come apart, the more information that people have about what has actually been transpiring, the better. But yeah, I don't have a lot of optimism about this being, stopped.
Maybe there's one possibility, though. If it really is the hokum that people like you say it is, then there are going to be, now the question of whether they feel like going public in such a toxic environment is another matter. There are going to be a lot of people whose lives were completely upended when they fell for this and went in for it and did the quote-unquote transition, that they may constitute a substantial enough number that it becomes impossible to ignore them as they start waving red flags everywhere. That's probably a bad image, but saying, look, there's nobody on earth who knows better than we do, that this is not the answer to your problems.
Well, they're already here. I mean, there's lots of young people that have come forward. Credit to them. And, they're talking about what's happened to them by the medical industry. And there are a lot of people fighting this at many, many different fronts. People don't know about them. They will know about them. I mean, they are coming to know about them more and more. I mean, information is coming out. We just had the CAS report. We had the WPATH files, right? Information is getting out. But the public is it's like Scientology on steroids. It's like the whole population has been indoctrinated into this cult. that you can change your sex, that sex isn't real, that it exists on a spectrum. And really, I mean, the detransitioners, these young people that have had medical assaults on their reproductive systems, that are coming forward and creating lawsuits, I mean, there'll be some wins. But ultimately, people are being ignored. These things are being ignored. I mean, you see grown men winning young women's track meets, pulverizing them in the ring, in a boxing ring, winning their sports awards, getting into their domestic violence shelters, their rape crisis centers. I mean, men are, sexual offending men are being put in women's prisons. This is happening and it is out there in the public, but people aren't doing anything about it.
No, they keep voting for it. They want more. They keep voting for it.
Yeah. So it's very, very, because they've been indoctrinated. You can't explain it any other way than indoctrination, because otherwise people would move. They would move toward goodness, right? Towards obvious, like, oh, this is unfair, this is unjust, we're going to do something about this. But parents will sit back in the stalls, in the arena, in the viewing arena of a public event, and watch these men win against their children. Now, some of them are moving, but the bulk are not moving yet. They're not moving. That's very frightening. To watch it like a mass hallucination take over, right? Of the general population. But the indoctrination is everywhere. It's in the movies they watch. It's in kids' programming. I mean, I watch shows, I'll go back and watch like a rerun of like Law and Order or Grey's Anatomy, or something. And it's like, all of a sudden, I recognize, the trans character. Yeah. From years ago, which I didn't see then. I didn't see it then. Now I see it. So we've been groomed for so long, to believe that, there are people that have a dissociative disorder, and that the way to help them is to dissociate them more from their physical reality, and that this is progressive and good.
Well, I do want people to stay informed, and you have been, as you say, writing about this for around about 10 years. So tell us again, how do we find your writing?
Well, I'm at Substack under my own name, J. Bilek.
That's Bilek.
Yes. There is my blog, the11thhourblog.com, and that's the 11 is numerical. And I'm also coming out with a book in July, Transsexual, Transgender, Transhuman Dispatches from the 11th Hour blog.
Okay. I will make sure that in the description of the video, we've got links to your writing, and the show notes page, tomwoods.com/2499, will also have links to your writing, so people can follow up and find out more and stay informed about what's happening. Because I don't know. I mean, I vacillate here on optimism and pessimism, and I just hate to leave folks feeling like things are hopeless. I always like to give the impression that all is not lost. So, but on this, it is hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I'm hopeful.
It's hopeful when you consider that we have the option to hold on to our humanity. And wherever that brings us, that's the most important fight we have here, is to hold on to our humanity. And the way to do that is to step up and tell them the truth wherever you can, whenever you can, and do not sway from that anchor. Because if we let go of this boundary between the sexes, all bets are off.
Well, couldn't agree more. So, Jennifer, thanks so much for your time and for your important work. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on, Tom. I really appreciate it too.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit tomwoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.